inviting me to speak this morning. You know, I work as a counsellor, as Brian said, in ARC, and with my background in oncology and palliative nursing and nurse education. But I've gained a lot of knowledge and learning through my, education. But my greatest learning in this whole area has been through listening to and being with and witnessing strengths of people who are living with their cancer, from diagnosis through treatment. Those people, are facing recovery, those people who are facing recurrence, and people who are at the end of their lives. So my hope today is, yes, I'm coming to you with a lot of knowledge, but I'm not coming to you as that expert and telling you what to do or how to do it. But perhaps my hope is that I would like that some of what I say will ring true with you and affirm you in how you're coping and how you're living with your cancer, whether you're directly affected by cancer or indirectly as a partner, friend, family member. So what I'd like to do today is to look at what does coping mean, because all of us have different personalities, we all have different and very different coping styles and strategies, different things that work for each of us. And then I'd like to look at the effects of worry and anxiety, because in living with a cancer diagnosis and an ovarian cancer diagnosis, we're living with that uncertainty. We're balancing hope, we're balancing uncertainty, and sometimes we're weighed down by one, and other times we're weighed down by the other. And then looking at things that what helps. When I was coming here this morning, I was apprehensive. But when I arrived in and I saw and I heard the Cork accents, I was absolutely thrilled, because I might be based in Dublin and I live in Dublin, but I'm from Cork. So I have a very clear identity. So Sheila and June and Pauline have all talked about, how the effects of when you were diagnosed with cancer, how the very foundation of your world was rocked in different ways, and everything was spinning out of control, and it felt as if it was on a roller coaster. And for some of you, when you were given your diagnosis, you may not have been able to hear another word after the word cancer was mentioned. It just felt unreal, and you were numb and you were frozen. You may have been felt overwhelmed by your fear and your anxiety, and that has come in at different times since then. Regardless of how strong you are, or how together you are, or if you were prepared for something being wrong, I'm sure that your mind took flight in some way when you were given your diagnosis. And this is all the more so because there may have been a delay with your diagnosis. Maybe you had a symptom in the previous weeks or months and you had consulted your doctor, but you were told, yeah, it seems to be okay. Or maybe in the weeks and months like June and Pauline, you might have been on holidays, or you had your other, as June was talking about, being pregnant with her daughter. And a diagnosis of ovarian cancer was the furthest thing from your mind. The shock, was so great and was difficult to take in. And then, when your diagnosis was confirmed, everything went at such a fast pace. You couldn't take it in. You might even have felt angry. Are they right? Could they be right? In everyday life, we live out a sense of control and a desire for certainty. And this is all challenged when we receive a diagnosis. The security we felt as a person pre-diagnosis is shaken. And then the cancer and its treatments intrude on your life, you know, your busy life. It messes up plans. It interrupts, you know, family life. It interrupts working life. And all of that. And then with the fears, you may have questioned, what am I going to live through this? How am I going to get through this and all the treatments? Is this something I did? And later, you know, how will this diagnosis affect me as a woman? You know, when we're waiting for this menopause, as we're hearing all those stories. How will the diagnosis affect my relationship with my partner, my family, my friends? And you may also have, you know, asked the questions at different times for which there is no answer. Why me? Why now? Why us? And likewise, as a partner, husband, family member, friend, you may also have asked those questions. And there are similar feelings as well. So the diagnosis of cancer affects all of who we are. It's a little bit like, you know, a stone hitting the still surface of water, and it sends concentric rings out from the center. You know, as the feelings and the thoughts and the reactions radiate out from the center. And cancer just, it challenges everything in our lives, and it brings with it that sense of uncertainty. So how do we live through this trauma? How do you cope? And as I said at the beginning, there is no one right way. Everybody will cope in their way. There are no rules, there are no stages. You know, we hear that, you know, I must go through A, B, C, and D. Different people will negotiate at different ways and different paces. Something that really, really struck me when I was hearing June and Pauline speak was that resilience, that inner strength that people have and is there. But sometimes when we're given a diagnosis, we kind of, we forget. And resilience is, I suppose, coping demands a resilience. And resilience is that inner strength. It's the sort of, you know, when I'm bent so far, that resilience helps me to move back again. Some people talk about bouncing back. I think it's moving back slowly. We're not broken, but we do come back. And it's about remembering the strengths and drawing on our inner strengths and resources that will help us to recover and to adjust, might be a better word, you know, to the difficulty and the change and the challenge that we're now faced with. And rather than I was telling you now what coping, you know, is, I think a question that we need to ask ourselves is, what do you mean by coping? Because we'll have, it's a little bit like the internet, and different people will tell us what we should be doing, you know, in order to cope. And sometimes we feel, oh, I'm not coping. And a good question to ask yourself then is, what would I be like if I was coping? Because you are coping at this moment in time as well. And what is coping not? It's not about being positive all the time. And I'm going to go back to that word positive that Sheila mentioned as well. It's not the absence of feeling sad and angry. You've a lot to be sad about. It's not about denying the difficulties and the struggles. It's not dependent on being brave and Some people put that on our shoulders, or you're so brave. And yes, we are, but inside we're feeling, shaky. And we have what I call the tyranny of positive thinking. And positive implies that there is a particular way to live. And that, there's a particular set of attitudes that you must adapt and you must live by. But a diagnosis of ovarian cancer is the most difficult and frightening experience that you've encountered. And all this hype claiming that if you don't have a positive attitude, and if you get down or depressed, you're making your tumour grow faster. That invalidates all of your natural and very understandable reactions to this threat. It can also lead you to feeling guilty and wrongfully thinking that in some way you caused your cancer. You did not cause your cancer. So perhaps maybe what we should be thinking about is being hopeful, because I can be hopeful without feeling obliged to be cheerful, because positive, as I said, means different things to different people, and usually you've been ordered to feel positive when you're feeling down. Somebody says, oh, be positive now, and you're feeling very down, rightly so. But positive to a lot of people means being cheerful and happy all the time. These are very transient feelings. So you can be hopeful without being cheerful. You can be hopeful even when you're experiencing fear, anxiety, sadness, worry. These are two passports. And when we're born, we all hold dual citizenship. We hold citizenship in the kingdom of the sick, and we hold a citizenship in the kingdom of the well. Now, although we'd all prefer to hold the good passport, for every person, no matter how short a time, we hold a citizenship of the sick. And sooner or later, we will all be obliged to hold that citizenship as well. So it makes absolutely no sense to blame yourself for being not well. Being ill makes one feel alone enough, and feeling guilty that you haven't done enough to, beat this adds to that feeling of isolation and loneliness, of being different from others. So I think it's even holding that image that we have two passports. And sometimes we feel, oh, I'm not doing enough to help myself cope. Or we kind of take it on from somebody else. And a good question to ask yourself is, if I was listening to a friend describing all that I've been through, would I feel as critical of their coping as I am of my own? So I want to move on to this whole area of worry, that feeling of uncertainty that we're holding. And worrying is common. We all worry in worrying situations. It's not so much the worry, it's the feelings and the thoughts that are stressful in the worry. And I break that down for you. Worry is helpful, and there is what we call helpful worry. It helps me plan for the future, and so I feel more prepared. I feel more in control when I worry. I can remember what worked for me in the past when I was in challenging situations. When I worry, a thought pops in, oh, if you try that. It motivates me to do things. You know, it distracts me from the present. Worry can be quite distracting, so I'm not really in the present. And it's a self-protective mechanism, you know. I got such a shock when I was diagnosed. I never want to get caught out like that again. So there is that worry, and that can be helpful, but then sometimes it will move into the unhelpful worry, where I can't stop thinking about my concerns and my worries. It goes on and on over days. You know, I expend an awful lot of energy in what might not happen. I'm thinking all the time. I can't focus on other things. You know, I can't take in reality now. I worry over the small, everyday little things as well as the big things. And then I wish I could stop worrying. And the more I wish I could stop worrying, it goes into a role, and I can't. And it depletes my immune system more because I'm on the alert all the time. I have some stage of alertness. So if we can understand how worry works in general, I think that will help us in our coping. And thoughts create feelings. And then feelings create behavior. And all of it affects my body. And then the behavior reinforces the thoughts again. So it goes around and around in a circle. And what I'll do is break each down and see, well, because some of us are very thought-driven people. I'm somebody who's quite a thought-driven person, so the thoughts are going on and on. Other people feel their worry in their feelings. You know, I'm so sad. And other people don't have thoughts, don't have feelings, but they feel their body. You know, I have a pain. And then I worry about the pain, so the pain gets worse. So it's just that all of us in life are more, you know, predominantly one or the other. We all have all of it. So worried thoughts. You know, usually when we're in our thoughts, we're in the future. We're worried about the future. We're not in the present. And if you take nothing away today except this, thoughts are not facts. Thought is my interpretation, but it's not a fact. And so when we worry, all our thoughts get skewed. Our thoughts start racing out of control, and we feel muddled. And then sometimes a thought just pops into your mind from no place. You know, you're going around, and you're doing fine, and then this thought pops in. And thinking something bad will happen will not make it happen. But when we're in that kind of stress cycle, we lose the ability to differentiate thought from reality. But thought is not a fact. It's our interpretation of the fact. Oops. So one way of gaining control is by becoming more protective. Because when we worry, mind starts playing tricks on us, and then it leads you into thought traps. And these can be destructive, and they can lead to full catastrophe thinking. You know, we start mind reading, and the consultant was worried, and she says my office is viral, but she's trying to protect me is thought. And she really thinks it's far more serious than she's letting on. So that's kind of that mind reading thought. Or we jump to conclusions, we think the worst. My back is sore, that must mean that the cancer is back. Or the if-then thinking. If the results don't come through today, that means there's the lab are understaffed or whatever it is, but we have gone into the if-then thinking. And then we have the shoulds and the oughts. I shouldn't feel stressed. You know, people have been so good to me. You know, the medical team are doing everything. The kind of burden of gratitude that we can start feeling. And I shouldn't feel like this. And that sends us off into a realm again. And telling yourself not to think something puts you under enormous pressure to think it. Just for a moment, if you're comfortable closing your eyes, close your eyes. But if you're not, that's okay. But I want you to think of anything you like at the moment, except white rabbits. Just think of anything you like, but not white rabbits. Okay. How was that? Where were the white rabbits? And that's what we do, you know, in telling ourselves, oh, we don't be thinking like that. That's all we think about. So I come back to it. And then we worried feelings. And again, it's like worrying thoughts. And somebody says, oh, don't be feeling like that. You know, stop worrying. Again, that's easier said than done. And it's very, somebody says, how are you feeling? You don't know how you're feeling. You know, it's very hard to sometimes word it. But maybe, you know, mood do I find myself in? But some of the feelings might be relaxed, sad, angry, anxious. You know, all our feelings are someplace, but we can be edgy, we can be confused. And again, I want you to hold that negative feelings do not cause cancer. You know, a lot of people who are negative live very happy lives from their negative feelings. So it's not, they do not cause cancer, but feelings are of a purpose for us. And then we have to worry about it. You know, when we're worried, our body goes haywire. You know, maybe our heart is racing. Maybe we have butterflies in the tummy. When we're worried about going for the scan, you know, we go to the loo more often. We're holding tension here in our shoulders or someplace else. We hold ourselves. We're restless. We're jittery. And I'm not going to give you an anatomy lesson or physiology lesson, but when we're worried, our body is affected, and you know, we're holding ourselves in there with that sense of watchfulness all the time. Yes, we have more adrenaline in our body, but we also have this autonomic nervous system. That consists of two parts. We have the sympathetic nervous system that gets us ready for fight and flight. You have to make sure that you know, this is a threat, so you know, look out. But we also have the parasympathetic system, and that's about rest. And rest and digest, as they say. It's just about one or the other, but we need a balance. But when we're worried, they can't have balance. So some of the things I'm going to be doing and talking to you about now will be about strengthening it, nourishing maybe the parasympathetic system. When I was coming out here this morning, you know, I mean, again, people tell you stop worrying, and you say, oh, how can I do it? And the traffic light metaphor is probably the one that I like to use to explain this. Because not many people can reason themselves out of unwanted thoughts, feelings. Some people can, but they're very few. I can't. But all of these things have changed. So the traffic light, when we see the green traffic light, yes, our thoughts, so we can move. You know, it's okay. The red traffic light says stop, but we can go to the place before that amber traffic light. Usually in life we try and get through the amber to get to the other side. But maybe I'm using it as a metaphor now to say pause. The amber says pause when that thought comes in. So when you notice, when you have your kind of detective out there, and you notice or you catch this thought, rather than say stop, it's saying pause, hold on now, what's going on? It's catching the thought that comes rather than, you know, getting to the other side. Some people take what they call worry time. You know, they might have 10 or 15 minute worry time they allow, where they write their thoughts down. And if you do that maybe for some people, you do that, read that over to see how many times have you talked about the shoulds and the oughts and the musts. I should do that, I should be. Maybe change the language to listen, and we can create those. You know, this is quite creative, and think of something that made you smile, or it'll give you a warm feeling. There's another thought in it. It's balancing. Feelings, again with the traffic light, you're okay, feeling worried, and a light. You know, when I was up this morning, when I woke, I was on my way to the hospital, and my mood changed. And sometimes we don't start feeling sad because we're fearful about it, but often it is good to do the feeling rather than away from it. And moving towards the feeling, and that's something I could hear when they were talking this morning, moving towards feeling what I need. What do I need? Breathing the feeling in. Yeah, I am sad, but I'm not too sad about it. But sometimes we fear that the feeling is very powerful and that it could overwhelm us. If I had too much of that, it could take me over. And one thing that some people find helpful in that situation is to imagine. I put that on, say, and see yourself standing the other side of the fence or sitting on the fence. And touch that animal from where you are, from that safe and pure place. And be compassionate towards it. You know, there's a lot of sadness there. So be compassionate towards it. Another thing that some people have found very helpful is if you wish to close your eyes, have a kitchen and you're doing whatever it is. And the radio is in the background. Your half is there, but you're not listening to it. And yeah, I'm interested in that, or it's a piece of music that you like. And you like and enjoy. And then that piece of music or that's now over, turning the volume down again and getting on with whatever is going on in the kitchen. Same way, we can turn the volume or thought and spend time with that, but also seeing ourselves turning on the thought. It doesn't weigh, but it gives us something to manage. And that visualization. So I can allow you to open your eyes. But if we haven't been doing it and learning it when we need it, it doesn't come through. So body down. Think that parasympathetics. And again, for a moment, and we just a little to allow your out breath to longer than your in breath. If you're willing, if you'd like to, you can join me. So as you breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then breathe out, 4. So breathe in, 1, 2, putting your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was, because often very word, we don't breathe out an awful lot, we hold. So it's allowing it, and it takes practice. But even when you're sitting at the glass, you're driving home, practice it. Practice it a few times during the day, because that helps us. Listening to soothing music, sometimes with the music, can help us. Practicing real vision, I mentioned a different organisations as well. So it's seeing what works for you. And something that's really important is to measure and treat it to life. You know, when you've done a treat a pleasure into your life. And particularly when you're, post-surgery and through chemo, and that fatigue, things that give you a sense of achievements. But when we say, usually big, unrealistic, but setting a goal for today, that's small, it's realistic. And then breaking that goal down to small, manageable, concrete, realistic steps. I want to go to the shops. So what do I need to do to, and taking your first step to achieving it, and rewarding yourself for your efforts. But if you experience, or will experience, a persistent low mood, anxiety, or these persistent thoughts and worries for longer than 2 weeks, and it's affecting your life, it can be very helpful to share your experiences with professionals. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. So that is something just to keep in mind. Every day you're going to bring something different. Counselling is different for everyone because you're bringing your own self, your own person, but concerns can be heard by another person. It provides an opportunity for some people to articulate questions and the difficult that you might be difficult to do for somebody. It's safe to explore losses. You've lost, and you maybe moved into that menopause very quickly. All different losses that you've experienced. as a woman, and it's a place where you can clarify what do I need from medical team. Am I somebody who likes, how do I need to hear it? Some people think I want to present, and really, no, I don't. So, it's all a place to exert on helping that there's nothing more can be done. It's a place to put things into perspective and into balance. It's a place to kind of rally and to be affirmed in those strengths and resilience that's there. It can be a place to learn those that you can alleviate. So finally, I want to sum up Jill Fingal. She's in Sloan Kettering in York, and her background is doctorate, and she has all these health hints. I don't know why they are not as one, but maybe. But she has what we call this, don't cancer yourself, and don't yourself for causing cancer. You didn't. Do rely on the past. That's something about resilience. Remember, what to be before. The cancer one at a time, rather than take chunks. It's too much. And on that I want to say, some a little bit fearful about, I'm in denial. Sheila had the head in the sand. Denial, when we're diagnosed, is don't suffer in silence. Don't be embarrassed to seek professional help when this distress is interfering with your living your life. And do use any methods that help you get in control over your fear, like relaxation, meditation, spiritual approaches. And don't keep your worries or your symptoms, either the physical worries or the psychological worries, secret from the person closest to you. And she wrote this book, The Human Side of Cancer, Living with Hope, Coping with Uncertainty. And it's a very accessible book. So thank you. I think in this presentation what I tried to do is almost a mishmash, but bringing some of those major concerns to light. So thank you very much.